So today, you guys, we are going to be talking about how to actually begin using the ink in your pen and ink drawings. I'm going to be teaching you how to use what is called a quill. We have two different types of quill pens in our department. You'll notice that one of these is a long black handle, and that the actual tip of this, the point, is a little bit wider. The brown tools, drawing tools, have a thinner metal point at the end. Both of these will make a linear mark. One makes a slightly wider line, but it's not that dramatically different. So it's more of a personal choice, personal style kind of thing. It is going to be very important that when you're using these, that you use them the way that I'm going to demonstrate today, and that you hold it the way that I'm going to demonstrate, because if you don't, you could break the tip. If you look at these metal tips, and I know you guys can't see this, I'm going to explain it, and I'm going to pass one around for you to look at. The actual end of this tip, when you hold it the correct way, and you're going to notice that there's a flat top, and then at the bottom it's curved. You always hold the tool, or the drawing tool, so that the top is flat, okay? This area is called the well, and the well has to face down. It seems kind of counterintuitive, but that is the way that you hold it. When you're holding your drawing tool and you're using it to do the drawing, which I'm going to demonstrate in just a moment, you want to only just put enough pressure to make the ink come off. If you press too hard with the tips, you can bend them. And I'm going to pass this one around for you to look at it. You can see that it's been bent. Usually the prongs will go back like this. The end of this ink tip has two pieces of metal that can separate. And as you're working with it, it's normal for it sometimes to kind of come open and then back together. But if you press too hard, it will permanently damage the tip and make it fray open like that or bend back. So we don't want to do that. I'm going to pass this one around so you guys can just look at a damaged tip to see what happens to it if you put too much pressure. When we're starting our pen and ink drawings today, I'm going to be showing you how to use the ink. But before I even show you how to use the tool and the ink, I want you to pay attention to a couple of our pen and ink drawings. And I want you to notice that in certain areas, the artist did not always use a line to denote a change in the elevation on the figure, okay? If you look at this, for example, there is a value change that happens. It's not just an outline on her face, it's actually a change in the value, or a change in the mark style. If you look at this drawing, you can clearly see that there is a change from stippling to the cross-hatching, which I'm going to talk to you about those marks in a moment. But the artist did not rely on simply outlining the entire face first. So the first thing that I want to point out to you is that I don't want anyone to begin your pen and ink drawing by just outlining your face. That is a no-no. So we're going to be creating edges with different mark styles or different value ranges, and that's how we're going to create those edges. When we're using our pen tips, we're going to be using the basic 3 marking techniques that I'm going to demonstrate today. I'm going to start out using just the small tip. This is a 102 tip, drawing tip, and I like this one. It makes a nice fine point, makes a nice fine edge. And when I'm using this, I want to have my paper in front of me. Now your works have extra space at the bottom of your grid. You're going to be doing your experiments with ink that I'm going over right now at the very bottom of your drawing. So you're going to be doing some experimenting with the tip before you ever do your actual drawing. When you're doing your tip experiments and your drawing experiments, I want you to get in the habit of using not only your Bristol board, but I want you to get in the habit right away of using a cover sheet. A cover sheet is simply something that we will use the entire time we're working to cover up any area that we're not drawing on. The reason for that is if I'm drawing on this area and I get too much ink, which these tips drip, and I mean it's just a part of what the tool is like, they will drip. And if it drips on your drawing, you're going to be devastated. And then we're going to have to figure out ways to either camouflage it or get rid of it. The easier solution is to not let the drips happen on your drawing. So the whole time that I'm working, I'm going to be having a cover sheet on everything except the area where I'm working. So when I get my tip, I'm also going to get my bottle of India ink. India ink is a permanent black ink. It is permanent, and that means that if you get it on your clothing, it's not going to come out very easily. Okay, it will almost always leave a stain. When I'm doing my work to help avoid getting stains all over your clothes, there are a few things that I want to help you with. Number one is only dip your pen in deep enough to cover the metal tip. You don't ever need to submerge it so that the ink gets up on the brown part of the handle. Because if you do that, then you're going to get ink on your fingers, which will then get on your clothes and your drawing. So you only submerge it in the ink. Always make sure you hold the ink bottle when you dip in. So I'm going to dip in. I want to dip it so that it stops before it gets on the brown. Okay, do you see that? Then what I'm going to do, I teach students to turn it so that the well, or the curved part, is facing up. And while I'm holding the ink bottle, gently just wipe the back. That helps remove any excess ink that could drip. Then I'm turning it so that my well is facing down. When I'm doing my hatch marks, there are several ways that you can use your hand when you're doing these lines. Hatching is just a series of lines. I would avoid pulling down straight like this too frequently. If you look carefully at this, you can see that it separates the tip. Okay? A better way to do this, I'm going to recharge this just to make sure there's ink in it. A better way to do this is to take your hand and pull it at a diagonal. I'm getting the pen tip engaged right now, so the ink has to come down. There we go. You'll do this on a scrap sheet when you start. Okay, if the pens haven't been used for a while, you have to reactivate, get the ink going into the tip. So if I pull down straight, which remember that puts the most pressure on those metal prongs, you're going to get a wider line. If you take and move your tool to the side at a diagonal, you can get a thinner line. Hatching simply means doing a series of parallel marks. Okay, the more lines that I put over an area so I can go back in and overlap this, the darker my value range is going to be. What you will be doing at that bottom area of your drawing is trying to create a value transition using each of the mark styles. Now, notice that I am lifting my pen after every line, and lift and lift. What you don't do with these tips is this, and I'm going to show you this, and then I don't ever want to see it again. These are not pencils. We don't sit and not lift it and go back and forth like that. Okay? That's a lot of wear and tear on the tip, and if you look carefully, can you guys see that little piece of paper that's on the edge of the tip? That's because when you go back and forth like that, it actually physically tears your paper. So you don't want to do that. Not only will it damage the tool, it will ruin your tip and your drawing. So this is hatching. It's a series of parallel lines. I'm going to recharge my ink tip. To do cross hatching, you guys have already told me about this. It's basically creating a series of parallel lines. And then I'm going to go back in the opposite direction. So it's creating something like a checkerboard pattern. And again, the more times I go over this area, the darker my value range. This is how you will get your darkest darks. Now, if you have an area that is 100% completely black, instead of resorting to doing this scribbling back and forth with the tip, talk to me, and there's the potential of using a brush to create those really dark areas. I will tell you that I am interested in you creating the darkest ranges possible with the different marking styles. And I can go almost 100% black just with my hatching and cross hatching. Does that make sense to everybody? My third mark is called stippling. And most of you are familiar with this from one of your middle school assignments where you did a dot painting. With that, again, turning the tip so that the well is down, you're just going to basically create a series of dots. This is the one marking method that tends to make students drip the most. Because what happens is they get tired of doing this individual stuff like this, and they start slamming the tip down really, really fast. Okay, and when you do that, it tends to make the ink run out of the well very quickly. Okay? So the trick with pen and ink is not... Did it die? That's cool. We had enough. Oh, good. Okay. So the trick with pen and ink is not putting more pressure on this to make it darker. It's to do layers of ink application to make it darker. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, so thank you. What you're going to do now